Hello, everybody. Mr. H here with you, and it's time for the Scramble for Africa. In 1860, Europe didn't really care about it and barely knew it was even there. In 1870, suddenly everybody's grabbing for that last donut at the end of the meeting. It's the Scramble for Africa. All right, here we are, 1870. Most of Africa is unexplored, not a lot of interest in it. In fact, the Ottoman Turks own the biggest chunk of it. French has a couple little pieces here. Right here is Portugal. They've owned this since the 1500s. The Dutch used to own South Africa. Now it's the British or the Boers, Transvaal, and all that. So, not a lot going on in Africa. And boom, they rev up the chainsaw and they chop up Africa, and everybody owns it. Only places that are independent are going to be Liberia and Ethiopia. Italy tried to conquer Ethiopia and lost really bad in 1896. So, why did Europe suddenly become interested in Africa, and why did they chop it up to pieces so quickly? Why? The usual reasons: God, glory, and empire. God, they want to spread Christianity. Never mind, Christianity's got a pretty good imprint in Africa to begin with, and of course there's Islam. Glory, of course, go glory, become the conqueror of Isan Lawana or something, become a duke, make a lot of money. That's one element. Empire. National pride is really big in the 19th century. People take it very seriously. A citizen looks at a map and says, "That's my country." Great Britain, the empire where the sun never sets. Germany and the Greater German Reich. Japan and the Asian co-prosperity sphere. That's coming up a little bit later, but it's already gotten started. Russia is just plain old Russia. We do know this is a cover for what? Yep. Money, stacks on stacks on stacks, 19th century version. It's kind of cynical, isn't it? All right, there. That's not quite as depressing. A little bit better, feel a little bit better? There we are. Now, when it comes to European imperialism in Africa, what's the first thing that comes to everybody's mind? It's the Zulu War. Isan Lawana and Rorke's Drift, January 22nd, 1879. Yeah, they make movies about it. There are tons of books about it, one called Washing of the Spears. I think this is really interesting because everybody gets a win out of this one. At 0600 on January 22nd, 1879, somewhere between 40 and 50,000 Zulu descend on the 24th Regiment of Foot and totally annihilate 900 British soldiers. The 24th Regiment is no more. Later that day, 4,000 Zulu attacked a British mission at Rorke's Drift. 100 British soldiers had time to build a little barrier here. They hold off 4,000 Zulu for an entire day. British lose 17 people on this one. 300 Zulu die before they decide it's time to go home and call it a day. So, hey, both sides end up 1-1 on the day. Very popular reenactment. Reenact it in South Africa. They even reenact this one in Georgia. How about that, Georgia? So I think it's popular because, like I said, everybody gets a win. The Zulu get a win on the first one. The British get one on the second. There's even a Lego one. How about that? That's got to be Rorke's Drift, right? See the barrier here? There's a picture somewhere. I've seen it. There's a guy dressed as a Zulu warrior and someone dressed as a British infantryman, and they're drinking a beer together. I've been looking for this picture for like an hour. I can't find it. If you find it, email it to me. All righty, prepare to become depressed. European imperialism in Africa. Now, European imperialism in the Americas, it was it was based on mercantilism. You send people over to North America, also shipping off your excess population. They make a clone of England, a clone of France, a clone of Spain. The Spanish are into gold and silver. The French make their money off furs. In the English colonies, they were looking for gold and silver, never found it, so end up with tobacco and later on cotton and then, finished goods. It's a place where you send your excess population, a place you ship your finished goods to, right? And then they buy it off you, and eventually they end up sending stuff back, raw materials, later their own finished goods or agricultural products. And Asia, what we saw was an informal imperialism. They'll take Canton, a small piece here and there they operate out of, but mostly it's informal, where they make money off the thing. You don't have to put a garrison there or anything like that. Um, European imperialism in Africa is kind of a mix of the two. It's formal imperialism because they take the place over, but it's also informal because a lot of places says Britain on the map, but the British don't go there. They're really more interested in raw materials and uh, and the intangibles like national pride and some strategic locations like the Suez Canal or even Cape of Good Hope. And of course, there's a little bit of colonization, most of that down in South Africa. So it's kind of a mixed bag. When you put all together, it's all pretty bad. All right, European imperialism in Africa. Write this down, take a picture. You can cut and paste if you like. I give you permission. Take a couple seconds and prepare to be depressed. All righty, here we go. Back to that map again. Now, in 1882, as you can see, the Turks used to own Egypt and Sudan. Well, they owed money to the British and couldn't come up with the money, so the British repoed the country. They were interested in the Suez Canal, but they've got Egypt. They worked their way down into Sudan, and then they have this idea of linking the continent of Africa from the Cairo to the Cape or Cape to Cairo. Huge railroad. They come pretty close here, so they do a lot of good work. Now, Britain and Egypt always seem to get along pretty well together. I guess they like the pyramids. They saw there was a tourism trade there. They both make money off this thing. They start working their way down into Sudan because they're trying to take over as much of the Nile as they could. They fight the modest war down here against a lot of Muslim uprisings and stuff. They take care of this down here. It takes a very long time. They actually lost the battle at Khartoum. And it's just back and forth. It takes a long time, but they finally get it. We also got the Fashoda incident where you got the French working their way across, and they run into the British over here, a place called Fashoda. They have a little bit of a standoff, but at the end the French back down because they got the war coming with Germany. Britain's a good ally, and let's face it, other than Djibouti over here, they don't really have much of a port, so it probably wouldn't have worked out anyway, right? So 1879 down here, the British already talked about the Zulu War where they conquered the Zulu. They're working their way up this way. They fight with some other tribes, Matabele and some other people. British worked their way up this way. In 1884, the Germans get in on the game, right? Became united country in 1871, so they're kind of late to the party, but they're going to try and push their way in. That's how they get Namibia over here, and over here is going to be Tanzania one day and Cameroon. 1884, they have the Berlin Conference, where they're going to chop up Africa in a nice, orderly way. Everybody gets a piece they want, inform the other guy, coordinate with each other. By the way, they didn't really invite Africa, any Africans, or any Africans were consulted, but they decided they're going to make this a priority project and chop it up. One good thing that came out of the Berlin Conference, though, was every one of these European countries committed themselves to outlawing slavery in the part of Africa they own. Right? Some mixed results, but at least they're trying to get some good out of this. Down here in 1899, 1902, the British fight with the Boer. The Boer were originally Dutch settlers. A few years, a couple centuries later, they born and raised in Africa. It's kind of like Americans here, coming from England, and 2 or 3 generations they're Americans. So the Boers try to stay independent of the British, and the British end up having to conquer it from 1899 to 1902. The Germans over here in Namibia go on a war of genocide against the Herero tribe and the Namas. They actually acknowledge the genocide. They're not really giving any reparations because they say it's way too late and won't do any good. But Germany has always gone, at least admitted what they had done, and they always send some financial aid down in Namibia. And in 1908, look at this, little Belgium. They own the Congo. It's what, like, I don't know, got to be like, what, 12 times bigger than Belgium itself? It was actually the personal property of King Leopold, and they were into tin and rubber and pulling all kinds of raw materials, later on copper and stuff down here at Katanga. And they were abusing the people working here, virtual slavery, if not outright slavery, and they promised not to do that. King Leopold had found out, and since he owned it, he took responsibility and gave the Congo, his personal property, to the people of Belgium, i.e., the Belgian government. So, although the Europeans did some bad stuff, they at least acknowledge what they did and they try to make it right. But, like I said, it happened. There's nothing you can really do. All you can do is learn from history and make sure it doesn't happen again. After the First World War, some of these colonies are going to switch ownership, right? This is going to go to the British, and this will go to the British for a while. British take a lot of this stuff. French grab some stuff. And after the First World War, there are colonial independence movements that don't really work out. After the Second World War, these colonies start becoming independent. Some peacefully, it's what the British did. Some had to actually fight. And that was a combination in 1945 of both European exhaustion and also maybe a European feeling of guilt, thinking maybe we shouldn't have done this in the first place. So they started letting people go with some convenient trade treaties, of course, and access to raw materials. Like I said, it's not a perfect world, but gotta make of what you find, right? All right, so imperialism in Africa. Get ready for the First World War. It's going to be a doozy, and you think that one's bad, get ready for round two after that one. Guys, have a great day, and I'll see you there on the battlefields of the First World War. I'm just a tourist, not shooting at anybody.